That's multifaceted, because you run into people who are like, I'm never going to be cancer free. Every day cancer every time, because the fear is driving them.
Right.
My fear is not driving me. I'm just like, nope.
You're moving forward.
I'm moving forward. I'm grooving. I'm like, no weapon formed against me is going to prosper. So you're not going to drop that in my ear and try to make me afraid, because social media, because it has the reach, is why you can scare so many people.
Everybody has a story to tell that makes them extraordinary, and that's what this podcast is all about. Welcome back to Conversations with Caitlin.
Welcome to another episode of Conversations with Caitlin, where we interview ordinary people doing absolutely extraordinary things. My guest today is an advocate and ardent supporter of Prunes. In fact, she founded Prunes Are Sexy. Her volunteer work and her advocacy for people's health is absolutely bar none. And today we are going to have a riveting discussion about influencing, advocating, and just being fabulous. Welcome to the show, Rhayne Thomas.
Woo! Caitlin, thank you. It's always a pleasure doing whatever it is you're doing.
We have had some good laughs and some good fun performing together. Performing brought us together, which of course I couldn't be more grateful. And I think as always with life, right, we get to sitting and talking and really like diving into those really deeper pieces of us. And one of my favorite things about you, Rhayne, is like you and it felt like we immediately just got deep. It was like,
oh yeah,
tell me about your deepest, darkest secret. How's your life going? Is everything good? And I just love that about you, because I think, it makes total sense to me now, of course, knowing you it feels like I'm coming up on a year of knowing you, I think, this summer, right? Summer, fall.
Probably is. Now that I think about it, yeah.
But all of the things that you have really devoted your life to are amazing. So let's start right off the gate with Prunes Are Sexy. Have you ever heard that, ladies and gentlemen? Rhayne was my first time hearing this. Let it rip. Let's talk about the origin story of this.
Well, I loved prunes as a kid. That was my favorite fruit. Growing up, we didn't eat candy. It wasn't like it was today.
Right.
And I loved raisins, but they were too small. So prunes were kind of like a big, juicy raisin, and I loved it. And as I got older, and I tell people, I said, I love prunes. And I'm like, ugh, what? That's so disgusting. How could you eat those? They're for old people. They make you go to the bathroom. And and I was just like, you know what? I'm tired of people bullying the prune. I don't like bullies. I don't like bullies on any level.
In general.
And so I said, I'm going to make the prune sexy. So I started Prunes Making You Run for breast cancer, Prunes Making You Run, Prunes Are Sexy. And I started National Prune Day like in 1988 because I thought the prune needed its own holiday to show those other fruits who the prune really
Who's
was.
boss,
right, exactly.
And that just happened right here on June 15th. It
yes.
seems like it's National Prune Day.
Yes, and on National Prune Day, anybody that gets in touch with me and they do anything revolving around prunes or they have a prune meal, a portion of the monies will go to survivors in memoriam, or their families.
Wonderful. And when you say survivors, because you have a very unique story yourself, survivors of cancer, right?
Of cancer. And you know what? I don't turn away someone who's a survivor of something else, because sometimes people will say, well, I'm a survivor of blah, blah. I'm like, hey, let's talk about prunes and bone density and gut health. I just need an opening.
I love it. And I have to tell you, I mean, if Prunes Are Sexy does not catch your attention, you don't have a sense of humor, and also you don't have a curiosity. The second I heard this, I laughed for like 15 minutes. I was like, this is amazing. So we're gonna go back a little bit.
Okay.
So you have a very interesting journey in the health and advocacy world, starting from a pretty young age, it sounds like. And so would you share a little bit about that with my listeners and kind of how that has evolved to our little hee-hee-ha-ha we just had about prunes being sexy?
Well, when I was 10, I had an uncle that was in the hospital. Nothing to do with cancer. He was in there because he had like a clotted vein or something. And that was the day when people sat all day and all night in the room with that person.
Right.
And the head nurse of oncology, she came in one day and she said to my mom, she says, can I take your daughter on my rounds? She might enjoy it. So I started going on the rounds with her, and she said, this is the oncology department. And she says, this is what people have. This is how serious this person was. So what she wanted me to do was just kind of entertain people for a few seconds. I'd take their meal. The guy who started knock-knock jokes was there, and he'd say, "Little girl, want to hear a knock-knock joke?" Like it's every day, right? Or can somebody read a newspaper article? Would you play checkers with someone? Can you sing a song to someone? And I thought, because I'm a kid, right? Why doesn't everybody do this? And prunes were on the list. You know, prunes were kind of my thing too. Could I get prune juice? And she said, "You're the only kid I know that wants prune juice." On the round.
You're right here with the patients. You're like, bring the bartender. We're going to need 2 cups
We
of that.
are this, and I need it on the rocks.
On the rocks, baby.
So it started that way, and just learning that sometimes it's the small things that help people keep going. And that's where keep going, when you see that hashtag in all of my posts, because sometimes it's as simple as, hey, do you want to talk about this? Hey, would you like an arm wrestling match?
Right.
So simple. And of course, as a kid, I'm like, well, everybody should be doing this, but I didn't know everybody had jobs and responsibilities, and it's really tough.
You know, I think those who are sick, chronically ill, seriously injured, you know, there have been studies that have been done about the way our brain works, even if they're unconscious, with people talking to them, singing to them, being there, that companionship. And I love that you bring that up, because it literally takes nothing to go down to a hospital and say, "Hi, can I volunteer?" You know, they have some, you know, rules of today. I love what you said. You're like, she's just said, "Take me along." I was like, I would die if I saw a kid walking with a doctor today. You know, because it's just such a different world. But the truth remains that human connection and engaging with people when they are at their worst, right? You know this. My mom was a trauma nurse for 50 years. That bedside manner, that isn't just a term. That's a way of life when you're caring for those who are at their worst, on death's door, the sickest they've ever been. Maybe they've had a new baby. Their life is about to change, you know? I love, and I can just see baby Rhayne, like trotting around with her prune juice, being like, "Hi, how are you? I'm coming in your room. I'm going to sing to you."
Well, you know, she would just say, "This is Mr. So-and-so." And Mr. So-and-so would say, "Look, kid, what you doing here, kid? What do you want to know?" And, you know, people were a different kind of transparent then, because things were very private back then. So I learned so much from the nurse, and I learned so much from the patients. And there were things happening that I didn't know were happening to people. And, you know, she would say, "Well, this person's going to go home. This person is going to have a really big surgery, and they may or may not go home. That person's going to go home." And like, she explained it in terms that made sense. And, you know, I was an old kid, so...
Well, you're an old soul. You've always been. Me too. Always. If you put me in a room of adults, I'd go right to them. If there were toys to play with or adults, I'd go sit down. Can I sit on your lap? I want to talk to you.
There's a curiosity there. I want to know about the world. I want to know about your journey. I want to know what's happening in your home. So it just kind of went from there. And so I just kept volunteering, or volunteering kept finding me. I mean, Special Olympics. I'd go out and run. Children of the Ward, take them camping. I mean, I was a kid myself then. Taking them camping. I'm a New York City girl taking kids camping. I mean, it was, I just think there's so much we can do.
And it's a profound yet simple yet so complex thing for people to understand today, right? That the kindest, smallest gesture, just sitting with someone and just having a conversation, you may be the only person they've interacted with, you know? I catch myself a lot, Rhayne. You know, I could talk to the wall if it talked back, but I think as the world has changed, especially in the last 5 years, the loss of my mom, things escalating very quickly for people I love around me, certainly the political and social climate we're continuing to live in today. I found myself for a while being real quiet when I was out and about, you know, which I know is probably a hee hee ha ha for everybody that knows me, but not really engaging with people. Like, I'd be pleasant and nice, but not on the normal level that I would engage. And I think my brother said something a couple months ago to me. We were in the car driving somewhere, and he's like, you know, I used to get, my patience is thin, you know, and I the fuse is short, right? And I think that's more present for everyone now, with the stress and the anxiety and kind of the unknown of what is going to happen next. But he said, and then I thought to myself, you know what? If someone has a mean interaction with me or cuts me off in the car, you know what? Let them go, let them be, because you have no idea what they're going through. And I think the same can be held true for what you shared, right? Whether it's in a hospital, you have people that are shut-ins. I don't know if that's like a modern term, but they're in their homes, reclusive, right? They're homebound. Mm-hmm. And I think, you know, for better, for worse, however you feel about it, a lot of religious organizations, volunteer organizations, they fill those gaps, you know, to make sure that there's that human touch day to day, and it matters so much. So talk to me a little bit about your health journey, because I think one of those things when I first met you, and we just went deep immediately, was your cancer journey, which meeting you and knowing you and just being with you in the performing space, like I would have absolutely never known that had you not shared.
Me neither, because again, you know, at age 10, I'm in the oncology department, right, on the ward.
Right.
Cancer doesn't run in our family on either side, and most people die in my family somewhere between 93 and 104.
Wow.
That's kind of the norm. A lot of them smoked, a lot of them drank, some of them didn't, but cancer wasn't a thing.
Right.
So I'm always an advocate, like, don't stick your head in the sand, get your body checked, you know, make sure you take care of your health, you know, stop eating all this junk, you know, try to, you know, at least walk a little bit, do something different.
Yes.
And in 2011, boom, there it was for me. I'm like, how is that possible? Well, again, we're in a different world, you know.
That's right.
The things we eat, the things in our food, the stuff we wear, the things we're exposed to.
Right.
But when you talk the talk, you got to walk the walk.
That's
I was in Arizona visiting friends when I got the news. My doctor called me at 4:11 p.m. on June 28th, 2011. I know that too well.
Wow.
And I love her. Dr. O'Neill is serious. She goes, Rhayne, it's breast cancer, but I'm the best there is, and we're going to take care of this. I said, okay. She said, I'll see you Monday, 7 o'clock in my office. Click. And I had been telling people all those years, you know, be informed, don't be in fear. You know, there's nothing worse than putting your head in the sand. Well, it doesn't run in my family. Well, this doesn't happen to me. So I was there Monday morning in Arizona, where I don't live. I didn't know where anything was. And she gives me this scroll. She says, you've got things to do. I said, how long before I can have surgery? She said, you got to get all this stuff done. So there I am with my GPS, going to all of these places blindly.
My gosh.
And that was Monday. I called her Tuesday afternoon. I said, I got everything done on the list. I said, when can we go into surgery? She said, I have an opening tomorrow morning. So Friday diagnosed, Monday and Tuesday scroll, Wednesday surgery. I was not playing around.
And that is remarkably fast for the medical system we know.
Right.
You know, and it's encouraging to hear that was the process and the swiftness with which your doctor moved. You know, I think I've shared this before, but my mom was not feeling well for months leading up to a formal diagnosis. And, you know, I think one of the little hardening of my heart, if you will, towards the medical system, right? And feeling like at every turn of the corner, are you trying to kill me or are you trying to help me, right?
Right.
Again, kind of a controversial thing to say. I have a lot of respect for people in the medical field. My mom devoted her life, but
I get it.
You know, when we talk about cancer, the big C, the rate of diagnosis, the response time of surgery or treatment or whatever that is, it does matter, guys. Like, your life depends on it. And I think, you know, Rhayne, I want to acknowledge what you said. It's like you're giving this advice and inspiration to people, like, keep going and don't put your head in, you know, the sand and live in fear. But I can imagine being diagnosed is a completely different experience yourself.
Oh, yeah. I mean, I was like, she couldn't have possibly been calling and talking to me. Not me.
Not you.
Not me. I didn't want it to be anybody.
Right.
But I certainly couldn't have seen it happening to me because I saw it, you know, from being a kid all the way to that point in my life. And I thought, well, what did I do wrong? And I'm like, well, maybe I did nothing wrong. I mean, it's just a thing.
Right.
But I have to advocate for myself. And that's where it comes in. For a lot of people, if a doctor says no, that lump is nothing, they go home and say, it's nothing. And they know somewhere in their gut, you need to get a second opinion.
You need to relentlessly advocate for yourself.
Yes.
One of the things I love about you the most is the advocacy piece, your willingness to advocate for others, but to most importantly, advocate for yourself. And I could write you a book on the stories since losing my mom that I've heard from people. And by the way, all different ages, all different backgrounds.
Yes.
Cancer does not discriminate. I want to constantly remind people in my life that I love. You just don't know. And so you go to surgery, and were you one of the lucky few that was the answer, and then you were able to be on your way? Or was this like one of those much more kind of like what you're saying, those layered processes of how do we get myself back to like the healthy and whole?
You know what? Because I get a physical every year. I don't care what they say. I get a physical. I get everything, as they say in the South, from the rooter to the tutor looked at. Top to the bottom. And so I knew something wasn't quite right. And, you know, my doctor, Dr. O'Neill again, she wakes me up off of the, you know, the recovery table, and we're nose to nose. She's like, Rhayne, I got it all. She said, I told you I'm the best. Like, I have no idea what's even going on.
Right. You're like, what day is it? What is my name? Where am I at?
Oh, yeah. And my friend, I had friends in Arizona that took very good care of me, a brother and sister, and I stayed at their home the whole time. And it was interesting because when I got home, you know, I was bandaged, and she's like, you can get pain pills. I said, no, we're going to rough it. And so nobody called me that day. They called my friends to see how I was doing. And then the next day, people were calling. They said, so how's everything? I said, everything's great. They said, you sounds like you're outside. I said, yeah, I'm running, so I can call you. But they're like, wait a minute. What do you mean you're running? I said, I asked my doctor. She said, just put on a couple of sports bras, and if I feel okay.
On your way.
Boom.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I ended up with 45 rounds of radiation, which made like my armpit fall out, and it smelled absolutely disgusting. And my husband was here in Vegas. You know, I told him, I said, hold down the fort. I got this, you know, because I saw it from so many angles for so long. I was like, I'm in God's hands.
100%.
And everything is going to turn out just the way it's supposed to.
That's right.
And so, you know, I did everything they said. I'd wear my gown in every day with jewelry, because why bother changing once you get there?
I mean, I'm like, guys, if you can't see visually on this camera, this woman is the most gorgeously accessorized creature I have ever met. I honestly, you know, I put my necklaces and my earrings. I'm a little simpler, but I got to dress up for my Rhayne girl, because she is the fabulous bedazzled queen.
You did just fine.
I tried, girl. I tried.
You did.
So you have your surgery, you do the rounds of radiation, and I imagine for even the most positive, most uplifting, most headstrong people that are like, I am getting better and that is the only answer.
Right.
There's a layer of like the unsureness and the unknown, right? The unknown, the fear of the unknown of what's going to happen next, the grief. Like, did you experience any of that?
Nope, no tears, no. You know, there's something I've learned since I was a kid. And for me, you know, I'm not religious, but I am spiritual.
Yes.
Fear and hope cannot live in the same house. You know, you can't. So as they always have this thing that, you know, Southern people say. You know, my family's from the South. You know, I'm from New York.
Yeah.
They'll say, you know, you can't serve two gods, and you can't. If you're believing that you're healed, then you can't be in fear. So either you're healed or you're afraid. If you're going in afraid, then you keep taking the problem back.
And you're stripping that energy of focusing on where we're going.
Exactly. I'm like, I'm healed. I'm in the best hands. Let's do this. I'm not going to let fear because fear is what causes people to collapse. It gets in and it just starts going in your mind.
And look where we are in today's world.
And look where we are today's world.
Fear is driving every single narrative, major event. The world is afraid of itself, right?
Right.
Now, I have this belief. I'm always going to be I've got a little fear of myself, right? And I don't mean that in a bad way, right? Because I think if you're thinking about who you are and what your purpose is in the world and things, you know, there is a little bit of a healthy dose of fear there, in the sense of, what am I capable of? Have I reached my potential? Like, am I giving my highest good, right?
You're exploratory.
Okay,
Fear
I'm inquisitive.
Right, and you're curious. Fear is false evidence appearing real.
Oh my gosh, I love it.
That's what I've always said, because think about, people drop nuggets of fear in people. You know, it's no secret I've done the national anthem for teams all over the country.
Yeah.
And every single time I get ready to go up the steps before they announce my name, someone will come over and say, "Oh my God, I can't believe you're doing this. If that were me, I would drop dead. Oh, I would forget the words." That person is trying to plant something into me that I am not going to have
You're
any
like,
of.
we're going to shut that down.
Right.
now.
You get out of here with that nonsense. I try to even go off to the side and people come over. They're like, "Oh, if this were me." Well, it's not you.
It's me doing it. I'm the professional.
Right. So get away from me. But people, that's the thing. I love social media because you can reach volumes of people with a
Absolutely.
message. But by the same token, we've created this world now based on fear. And if you can make 98% of the people afraid of everything,
you're going to be
2%
able
of
to
the people-
control
right,
the way
exactly.
they think, the way they
Right.
move, the way they groove.
Right.
And it's also like, and I know because you do a lot of influencing, you work with brands, and I know you're very selective with the brands that
Right.
you work with. But I've noticed this lately, and I'm really flabbergasted, but also encouraged, because I feel like a lot of us are kind of having this realization about social media. It's so fake. Like 99% of what you see, I'm like, this is
Right.
not real. And it, with AI really coming into its
Right.
own now. I was watching this video. This man had AI'd himself into like a war zone with like a microphone, like he was a news anchor, and he literally says into the microphone, "Grandma and Grandpa, this isn't real."
wow.
To make the point, right?
Right.
That everything is just not as it seems. That kind of, it's very Alice in Wonderland to me, right?
Right.
Like something looks a certain way, but it isn't. And all this to say that I think, it's really why the world, I think, is craving authenticity and genuine connection. And some people are leaning into that, and some people are still kind of subscribing to the fear, right? The
Right.
fear of not understanding your culture, the fear of not
Right.
understanding someone's lived experience, the fear of not understanding that, again, I said this in an earlier episode, two things can be true at once.
Right.
Okay? Things can be wildly out of control, and we as human beings still have the chance to change that. We single-handedly are the greatest invention on earth, whether
Right.
you believe in God, the universe.
Right.
Human beings are the most remarkable asset and
Right.
thing that we have, And so we tangented, which I'm really good at that, Rhayne.
That's why I'm here.
So you're like, and squirrel. So with the diagnosis, the going through treatment, you get that, what I can only fathom as that day of just like pure joy, like you are cancer free.
That's multifaceted, because you run into people who are like, "I'm never going to be cancer free." Every day cancer every time, because the fear is driving them.
Right.
My fear is not driving me. I'm just like, nope.
You're moving forward.
I'm
You're
moving
grooving.
forward. I'm grooving. I'm like, no weapon formed against me is going to prosper. So you're not going to drop that in my ear and try to make me afraid, because social media, because it has the reach, is why you can scare so many people. I mean, back in the day
Right.
with, where I'm from with carrier pigeon, it's hard to put fear, but the fear is there because there were wars
Right.
and hatred and violence and
Right.
the whole nine. But now, because the reach is so big, you have to be careful about everything you ingest.
Totally.
And
it's just like food, drink,
Period.
Sunlight,
Right.
whatever. It is something that's pouring into you, and it's pouring into what's so powerful as your mind.
Right.
And it can destroy lives in a matter of seconds.
Seconds.
That piece of it, girl, I am
Seconds.
baffled and
Yeah.
blown away. Since starting this podcast, and really probably about a year before, because my brother had been getting into podcasting and has his own show, I became very fascinated by podcasts. I listened to if people looked at my Apple podcast and saw the different things, I have a very wide net of what I'm
sure.
listening to, because I think I'm fascinated by what people want to talk about and what they're interested in, but I'm also fascinated by the way that some of these, they are absolutely rooted in fear.
Absolutely.
fear
I know
driving,
that.
right?
Right.
If you don't have this product, you're
Right.
not going to make it.
Right.
If you do this, your whole life is going to be over,
Right.
right? And the greatest lesson and thing that we know, and I think the biggest gift of being an adult is that nothing's permanent. Everything in life is changing by the second. In this world, but you blink your eyes and it's changed.
It's not even a blink.
So you get through this major medical event. You are here. I can't believe it's going to be 14 years
It's
later.
up.
This coming
Yeah,
up
July
next weekend,
15th.
right? Or,
July
okay.
15th. Yeah.
So, I mean, as someone who has been affected by cancer, losing my mom, looking at you, you are like this like beacon of hope and someone that I just so admire because I know it's not easy. So what was that like? What was the fuel in the fire then? Now you've lived this health experience. You come back out the other side of it and I imagine that completely changes or like propels you forward with the way that you're advocating and volunteering and trying to reach more people.
It's the same because I've always been a tigress, because I come from a very challenging and negative background. And that was far more difficult than cancer was.
Really?
And yes. And, when you come from someplace negative and you don't believe in yourself, my background was rooted in fear. And so trying to navigate myself through the world, which was a little simpler then, but still having all these fears. And a lot of those fears, not a lot of them, 99% of those fears didn't exist. They were just put into me. No man's going to want you. You're an ugly girl. You're like a bull in a china shop. You're not going to be, and you grow up and this stuff is in your head. So
and
I
it's
learned,
like a record on a loop, right?
It is totally on a loop.
You start to hear something. It's like memorizing songs for shows.
Absolutely.
You hear it enough, you're like, this is the truth.
Absolutely. And when you're a kid, of course, you hear that all the time. I wore glasses since I was like 7.
Love it.
And I had buck teeth that were on top of each other. And, and my family used to make fun of that all the time. It wasn't the kids at school. The kids at school, they just thought I was fun and different. I made all my clothes. I had a whole line of clothing. And by the time I was in college, I had a line of clothing, a line of wedding gowns and clothes for men 6 feet and tall because you didn't really have that. Yeah. So it was really different, but I was the odd duck because I was different. And, my family made it very clear because I was the odd duck, I was never going to be like anybody else and I would never enjoy the spoils of life. So I've learned to be sarcastic to match them to leave me alone, which became funny. And then I said, I might be able to put this together as a blues singer, being able to tell stories and then people didn't know the stories were true because I tell them the same way I tell them to you. And people's like, get out of here. That didn't happen. I said, girl, if you only knew, you know?
Let me tell you, it actually did.
Yeah.
So coming from a challenging home life, you are one of the most confident people I've ever met in my life.
Wow.
And I mean that with like this most sincere depths of my soul. It's impressive. Like I look at you, I'm like, okay, I want to be like that.
Yeah, no.
So where did that come from? And how have you been able to kind of evolve that confidence over time as you've grown, knowing that, because we know it can always go one of two ways, right? You're
Absolutely.
either through the roof confident or you're like the meekest mouse in the room that's like, I don't even know if I can, wake up today.
Right. I knew growing up I was never going to get into drugs or alcohol or have kids because I didn't want to do anything that might loop me back to my family. Because I saw people end up on crack or cocaine, and they ended up living with the people. There's this old saying, you can't get well in the environment you got sick in. So you have to take yourself out of it. But they don't know they're coping with it the best they know how, with drugs or alcohol or whatever it is.
Numbing the reality, right?
Numbing it. I just wanted to get away. And so it wasn't confidence, it's a mask that I've worn my whole life, which is why I was very selective in dating. I want to date, and I didn't date a lot. I want to date without anybody really getting to know me because once you get behind this wall and you see my family, you're going to know I'm damaged goods. So when I met my husband, I told him the first night I was damaged goods. And, he's kind of like, what? My husband's real quiet. But the woman you see right now is the woman my husband molded. He came along And, it's been almost 30 years we've been together.
Wow.
And he chiseled away those things that I was told, that I was an ugly woman and, no man's going to stay with me. No man, he's going to see another woman, any woman who's more beautiful, and he's going to go run after that woman. So I'd been taught all men cheat, all men lie, all men steal, all people do this,
Right.
So I have trust issues.
I would say that would be a total given.
Yes.
I'm not
Trust
trusting
issues.
anybody at this point.
Because you, as soon as I get comfortable, you're going to do something.
Right.
Shoe fall,
Yes. Oh.
And my husband is such, I know for a fact that God created him just for me. Because I'm a lot. I'm a lot.
In the best ways.
No, even in the worst ways. You see this part over here that's wonderful. I can tell you what's behind the door. I always tell people, the Hulk has always been my boyfriend since I was a little girl. And people say, the Hulk? Why the Hulk? Because I thought he understood me when I watched him on television. That people picked and picked and picked until you exploded. And then you were the problem.
Right.
And that's where I came from. They would pick and pick until you'd let loose and it's like, you're the problem.
Whoa, yeah.
And my husband taught me how to navigate that anger and that girl inside who's very broken and very hurt. And, I hadn't accomplished anything I wanted to accomplish up until this point. I know it seems like that, but you can give him the thanks. Obviously for me, God comes first, but I feel like God groomed him so he could groom me. Wow. And he's been a very good husband and a very good friend. And my best friend the same way. We've been friends forever since high school.
Yeah.
But her and my husband, they have the same traits. So I know she started grooming me. So when he'd come in, they like the same stuff, that we're all polar opposites.
Yes.
So that confidence, which I don't see or feel as confidence, I think is just, I'm transparent and I'm genuine. I have nothing. Once my husband showed me how to let go of shame, that's when things started to unfold and I started blossoming.
Well, and you haven't let the difficulties of life harden you. I think there's something really profound about that you still are out here saying, hey, I want to help others. I want to take this hilarious saying, Prunes are sexy, and I want to use this as a foot in the door to say, hey, let me talk to you about health. Let me talk to you about your health. It's so wonderful. And I think my reflection is, Rhayne, that some of the most hard start in life people are the kindest, the most creative, the most amazing people, because to your point, you're like, if you go left, I'm going right. If you go up, I'm going down. If it's blue, it's red. If it's green, it's yellow. You find those things. I know for my mom, that was very true as well. She grew up around a lot of addiction, a lot of really, really deep, dark mental health issues in her family, and to see people actively make a choice to not be that, and to be their own person, and to find their joy and their advocacy and their love for humanity when they have every right to not love humanity.
Right.
I find that to be absolutely incredible. So I want to dig into you as a performer a little bit, because I get to perform with you and I'm so privileged, and you and I just have this natural, I think, chemistry when we perform, and just this knowingness, this sisterhood. But you have done some really incredible things with your performance. And so I was hoping you would share a little bit about the Rocket Boys project, because you started to tell me about this actually at our last gig, and I was like, this is so fascinating. So can you share what that is? People are probably like, Rocket Boys, what's that? What is it? And how have you been involved? Because it's a very unique performing journey with this.
It is. And you know what? That was being in the right place at the right time. My cousin, who I hadn't seen, I don't remember ever seeing her, but she came to Vegas to visit my dad, and she wanted to meet with me. And I'm like, oh gosh, drama. But I met her and loved her instantly. And she said, if you're ever in West Virginia, come visit me. So we did, and she put together some book signings for me. And one of the book signings at their only Starbucks there, this guy walks in, and we hit it off instantly, and the place is packed.
Yeah.
His name is Will Scott Hill. I call him Whoosh. And we became instant friends. So instant, the next day I said, I like your wife. Can you send her to me and we're going to go on a retreat together? And we did. We went to I know. Yeah, it was crazy, like in a matter of minutes. And he didn't know that I could sing. So he was promoting books and literacy in all the schools in West Virginia. You know, West Virginia's kind of a poor state, but they're so proud and they're wonderful people.
Yes.
And so I don't know, we were at one high school and a girl asked me something and I said I used to sing or whatnot. And she says, well, could you sing something for us? And when that happened, whoosh was off to the races. The next thing I know, I was watching the movie October Sky with Jake Gyllenhaal about these 4 kids, you know, coming out of West Virginia, and they want to be, you know, build a rocket, you know, be an astronaut. Right. And they did. And I got to do the anthem for it because Whoosh brought me in to do the anthem to get in the mix. Beautiful. And I love them. I mean, Homer and Roy Lee, I mean, they're family. So Homer Hickam, such a great guy. I mean, he's done a lot. If you look at him, he has like a jillion followers. Wow. And so one day they were all in some meeting that I'm not at. They're in West Virginia. I'm home on the sofa. Phone rings, it's Whoosh. I always pick up. I was like, hey. He goes, hey. He says, I have an idea, and I have Homer Hickam here, and I have so-and-so here and so-and-so here. He said, we're going to do, you know, the musical, you know, October Sky or Rocket Boys musical, and Homer's right here, and we think you should play Homer's mom. And I said, okay, wait a minute. Now, because we're playing a real person now, right? That's serious. Right. So I said, I need to think about it, right? So a couple of days go by, I'm looking up Homer and, you know, more about him, and his mother pops up, right? She's like a pioneer, fierce pioneer, sassy. I mean, she is the woman who got them out of that coal mine. And so her name Elsie Hickam. And so I said, I looked and it says her birthday was June 15th. So I pick up the phone, I call home. I said, hi, homie. I said, what was your mom's birthday? And he says, well, you know, he said, Rhayne, it was June 15th. I said, are you sure? He says, yeah, I'm pretty positive. I said, okay. I said, that's my birthday. And he you know, chuckled a little bit. And I said, well, that's not clear enough. God, I need for you to give me another sign that I need to do this.
We need another green flag.
Yeah. Well, it came in hot. They sent me her actual scarf and this pin she wore all the time. Oh. And so there I am.
And
so
the
now,
rest was history.
The rest is history. When I text Homer, or when he texts me, he always says, hi, Mom. I say, hi, son. And that just shows, you know, if you just stay on track. And if it were not for my cousin coming in, that started
an unlikely source to
extremely, because I was trying to stay clear. I was just like, oh no, I can't.
You.
Yeah. And she and her husband, you know, they're my family. They're just absolutely wonderful West Virginians, and West Virginia has changed my life. The people there have changed. Oh yeah, they've changed my life, especially Whoosh and his wife. Well, their last name is Hill, so she's Kathy What the Hill, and so life changing.
And it's so interesting, you know, the way I think performing and relationships kind of take you. They can take you all over the world. They can take you to some of the smallest, most quaintest places, and you have these stories that they need to be told, right? I mean, these are stories that matter. When you were telling this, I loved the movie October Sky. I was very invested. So if you ever do this show again, I'm getting on a plane and I'm coming and seeing you.
You hear that, Whoosh? If we ever do that show with Homie again,
I gotta be in the front row. Now, you mentioned books, and this is something I didn't know about you. So I'm really excited.
I bought them here in secrecy.
Squirrel. So I love this. This is my favorite because you know I love my mom. It says Gracisms, my mother's list of Southern sayings, and my job to interpret the consequences.
Yeah.
I can't even get it out because I'm laughing. Okay, tell us all about this.
Just if you like those, if you're watching A Few Seconds to Inspire, my YouTube channel, it's Southern wisdom. But, you know, for a New York City girl, it didn't make any sense. We're not in the South. I don't know any of this craziness, you know. And they would say, well, you know, so-and-so went by and he was like a one-eyed cat peeping in a seafood store. What does that even mean?
You're like, I'm gonna give you the translation. It's so funny. This chapter says questions with no good answers.
None.
Do you think I was born yesterday? Do I look like Johnny come lately? This is hilarious. What in the Dickens? There's some good ones in here. There's some bangers, guys. We might have to whip some of these out.
Oh yeah.
Do I look like a maid? My mom had her version of that. She's like, yeah, the Irish wash maid won't be in this week. You do your own clothes, right?
It's all the same.
Oh God, it's just, this is so interesting. I've begin compiling some of the stories and some of the funny things I remember about my mom, if for nothing else, just for myself, right? To kind of put pen to paper and do it. And I think that, you know, this type of thing is so exciting. I'm not surprised in the least that you have written, that you have put pen to paper as well. This one also cracks me up. I guess I'm gonna be doing a lot of reading this weekend. I'm 40, I'm feisty, and there's a gray hair in my what? That is hilarious. And other surprises after the age of 25. All of my girlfriends need a copy of this. You will be getting one of these, ladies, because we're getting closer to 40 as the day goes by.
It's over 25 is where it started
hilarious.
with that one hair and like chin hair and mustache and
being a woman is so unsexy, right? Unlike Prunes being sexy, I'm like, guys, there are so many things. You know, the one hee hee ha ha of my friend group is, you know, and you know this because you've done shows with me and you've rehearsed with me. You know, my eyebrows are the lightest, faintest eyebrows God has ever slapped on a face. And so my friends, the running joke, of course, is always, hey, are we slapping a brow on or not today? You know, I'm trying to get the courage up to do one of my episodes here with no makeup on. I think I'm getting close. I'm getting close because you know, it's so funny. It's so funny the things we attach our identity to as women. Mm-hmm. Our hair. I mean, you have beautiful hair. Our features on our face.
Mm-hmm. Our height.
Yes. Nails is like a big one. I have a lot of friends that are nail girlies that's like, if their nails are not done, they will not leave their house. Like, point blank period. They're like, you can't see my. I'm like, girl.
Oh my goodness.
No one's gonna look at your nails. Everyone is so self-absorbed. They're looking at their own thing.
Right.
So, and I'll put the links to Rhayne's books and some of the funny things I find in here because I know there's going to be some bangers.
There's some silly things, and that's me on the cover.
I love it. This is you as a baby
that's
and
me.
your mom.
Yep.
You were stylish even back then. How is that possible?
You know, I'm a
how
thrift
is that
store girl.
Possible girl. I know. Every time I see you, I'm like, and this outfit, incredible.
I just want you to know, and all my friends
Incredible.
that watch this are going to laugh because they know I hold on to things forever. I have had this shirt since my senior year in high school. Come on now.
Are you kidding me?
No, I'm not kidding.
It's so fashionable. It looks. I'm like, where did you get this?
First of all, it was a different color, and I dyed it so my friends wouldn't recognize it and give me guff for it.
You're like, we are recycle reuse over here.
Oh, I am totally.
As the time goes by, I'm like, I don't want to get rid of anything, but then I'm like, I have the guilt of like, I'm not going to go buy something else. I've got a closet full of stuff we can reinvent. One of my early episodes of this show, I had my girlfriend Kim on, and she has this company called High Style for 100, and it's all about she calls it shopping your closet, right? And I love it. I love it because I think sometimes, again, in a world that tells you in order for you to be more, you must have more, do more, consume more.
Right.
I think if you really strip that down to the basic pieces of it, who you are is absolutely enough. And you are what makes you, not the things you wear and the car you drive and those, you know, the worthiness game that we play. So to round this out, because again, as per usual, I knew I was going to want to sit here and kiki with you for like 24 hours, which we probably could. We're going to need some dinner for this one and a cocktail. So I want to know, with all of the work that you do with this Prunes Are Sexy movement, is there a funny story? Are there some really great reflections you've had of like the impact that this has had on others and around the world? You know, you've done this campaign and this movement advocating and speaking at events, movement, wink, 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 wink. You know, you've done this all over the world. So what are those kind of reflections on, you know, all of this great work that you've done really helping others?
Well, and I go out and tell people I'm cleaning one colon at a time, and people laugh about that. And they say, well, why prunes? I can't believe how many people have never tried prunes. So thanks to, like California prunes and Looney Pruny, I get to take them with me and take them to festivals. I mean, I do Mayberry Days, the Andy Griffith Show every year. I'm in the parade as the prune queen. I throw them out to people.
I love it.
Every year people are like, are you going to throw out prunes? Like when I get there, they're waiting. They had never tasted them. And I talk about
They're really good, actually. I like
good.
prunes.
They're so good for your bones. They're so good for your gut health. And we all know if your gut's messed up, the rest of you just starts falling apart.
Sister.
So, some of the funny ones is I think this is the funniest to me. And this was years ago in Canada. And it was busy and I was doing books and I had the prunes there. And this lady comes up to me with her husband. They were older couple, like probably early 70s. And they chatted for a minute and he walked away, not too far, and sat down. And she was talking and the subject changed. She goes, honey, I'm so glad that you gave my husband some prunes because he has all of these bowel issues. Like he'll go in the bathroom and I'm staring at him because I'm facing him. And she's talking to me like this. And I'm thinking
about all of his very intimate details of the toilet. Yeah.
Whole intimate.
Gosh.
She's like, and she says, and sometimes I hear him groaning and I'm standing there like, oh boy, she's telling. And I didn't want to laugh. I'm thinking he might know she's talking about him, but I don't want him to know that she's talking about him and I'm listening.
Oh
but
my gosh.
it was, and she meant well. You could tell she was just, and she's like, it's, thank you for doing that. And, it's important. And I try to tell him, don't eat so much bread. And okay.
Okay, girl. And prunes are still sexy.
Yes.
Take 5 more bags home with you.
You take you and your husband and your colons home.
I love it. But I think, and I just find this so novel, so powerful because you just don't know how things, even when you take something, funny, I always think back to one of the first, in my opinion, public health campaigns that changed the way we see breast cancer, treat it, and the rates of curing that kind of cancer was free the tatas. I mean, you would have thought, and men wearing those shirts, I mean, it just became this funny but powerful thing. And when I think of this Prunes Are Sexy movement, I think of that because you know what? We all need to be thinking about our health, right? Our health is our own journey. It's our own thing to literally take care of.
Right.
And so I love that you use what any of us who have come to know and love is your humor and your wit and your sarcasm to literally start conversations with people about something simple and yet so powerful to impact your health.
And I want it to be affordable because a lot of times when we start telling people about getting healthy, we're like, oh, you need to eat organic this and that. Who is going to run out? Not everybody can afford a $50 steak every night.
No.
But if you can run out and get a bag of prunes, just start there. With the kids, start with your children. Stop giving them all this candy. And I hear people come and say, my little one, they always had a stomach ache, and I started giving them prunes and prune juice, and they really like it, and things turned around. That's what I want. I want you to see that your body can take care of itself.
That's right.
If it's getting some of the things that it needs.
This thing wants to be alive so badly. I think people who have been through, I live with a chronic illness, watching my mother go through her journey. Rhayne, you lived yours. Like, this thing relentlessly fights for you. And so if we can give it one more thing, make something that's unsexy, right? When you we started at the top of this episode, you said, and people think prunes are only for old people people that can't poop, right? And the reality is habits start young, good habits start young. And if we can inspire people to also not have this stigma and this fear of talking, right? I have ulcerative colitis. If you would have said to me at 15, go talk to these people about pooping, I would, Rhayne, on everything that I am, I would have been like, I will run to the continent of Antarctica at this point. I am not playing around. Like, I am so mortified. And I think over time, I learned, it probably wasn't until college when I I was pretty what I would in our world we call remission, like feeling stable, feeling manageable, not completely whole, but able to live a great life, right? And I don't look sick, so. But I mean, my college roommates, like, it kind of got to a point where we'd be going out or we'd be doing things, and I'd be like, hey, just so you know, like, this is something that I deal with, and so just knowing that they understood, and then we'd make it light and funny and laugh, and it's like, you have to laugh. If you don't laugh about the serious things of life, you'll cry, you know, and not in a good way, not in a fun way. So as we round the corner of this beautiful conversation, I want to talk about your best advice you would give people. You have a lot of irons in the fire with the work that you do. You really are an entrepreneur in your own right with all of this that you're doing. So what would be your advice to people listening about how you maintain and manage everything you're doing? Best advice when you're looking at really, doing something you're passionate about?
First of all, you can't tell everybody what you're doing. And I know people are like, oh, my family supports my friends. No, not everybody's happy for you breaking out and doing things that you want to do. And I said, and again, people will plant these little seeds in there. Oh, that's a great idea. I don't know if anybody will know about it, but that's a seed of fear. So try to keep that close to your chest, what you're doing. Let the proof be you coming out and doing it. Don't share your secrets with everybody. Again, not everybody is happy for you. So you got to, one or two people that might be out there that can say, hey, I'm in your corner. Let's drive this thing. But that's it. Keep that to yourself. And to thine own self be true. And that's really hard because we got a world out there that keeps telling you how you're not anything enough. And even, does that even exist? I mean, even if I was 6'1", like I think in my head, I probably wouldn't be enough. They would say, well, you're too thick, or you don't have enough top or enough bottom or enough of this. You're never going to please the world. You have to look inside, because that's where the temperature check is. And I tell them, a lot of people come to me and they say, I know what you're going to say, but then don't ask me, because I am going to be true. I would never give you advice I wouldn't give myself. And I say, when there's a problem, and, if you say, well, this is always happening to me. This is always happening. I have friends, I always get guys that do this. I always get guys that do it. I always have friends that use me. So the temperature check is internal. Because those people aren't just coming to you. Something you're doing is collecting these people.
Is attracting this energy in this situation.
It's bringing this stuff to you. Because I've never had any of those things that some of my friends and colleagues and strangers come to me and say, that has never happened to me ever. Because I'm not going to let you in here. You're not good for me. You have to start being more discerning of what is good for you and what is not good for you. And you know what? Today I released on a few seconds to inspire, knowing when a season is over. Sometimes this person, this thing, this place is done. And you're holding on to it because we like to hold the dead horse and we like to beat it.
We do.
No. You have to release it so you can get down the road on your journey.
And if you focus on your own piece, you're energetically, we know that changes the world. Human energy is one of the most powerful things. Just, think about going to a concert. There is a palpable feeling in a space like that when everyone is kind of in a, listening and enjoying this music. It's the same thing with life.
In alignment. That's what you're going to say. It's in alignment.
Yes. And I love that advice. I think and to thine own self be true. I mean, it's such a simple saying that we make so complicated, but tend to your own garden, take care of your own house.
Business.
Mind your business. One of my favorite influencers says, "Drink your water and mind your own business." That's how you're going to be healthy.
I mean, that's how people say, "Well, what are you doing now, Nunya? What's Nunya? None of your business.
None of your business."
Because you're not going to throw me off track trying to tell me, I've always wanted to do that. No, you don't. I've known you 20 years. You haven't made one step.
You have not done what's exactly.
So know who your cheerleaders really are, and make sure you know that tribe.
And be your biggest cheerleader. You really inspired me today. I think it's when you're doing new things and you're trying, most of the world isn't trying. How about that? Your biggest critics are usually people that aren't trying, that aren't out there, creating, failing forward. We say this in the museum world, fail forward. If I ever had a child, I would want to teach them that failure is okay. It is so okay to fail and to try.
But I don't use the word fail. I tell everybody, some days you win, some days you win less.
Ooh, I like that.
There's no such thing as failing, because only time you fail in my mind is if you don't learn the lesson, because you're going to learn the lesson over and over and over. That's a failure.
Right.
But if you win something today, I mean, you got up, you're alive, you're well, you've won.
I love
Do something on top of that. If for some reason you didn't get where you wanted to be, okay, you won less. Tomorrow.
There's always tomorrow. That's
if
right.
there's tomorrow, because you may not get tomorrow.
Hopefully you're blessed with a tomorrow.
Do it today.
Yeah. Don't waste your beautiful life. My mom used to always say that to me and my brother. She's like, whatever you do, make sure that you feel good about it, because the days are, and I think as you get older, you realize this, right? The days move so fast. It is literally almost July. How is that
almost
possible?
Christmas.
I want someone to tell me how, yes, it's almost Christmas. I can't. And then New Year's.
Wow.
Rhayne, oh my gosh, this conversation has just uplifted my spirit like I knew it would.
Mine too.
But I want to make sure we do our 1 minute mission pitch here. I want you to talk to my fabulous audience, and I want you to tell them how sexy prunes are.
Prunes are very sexy. 2 things I want you to take with you if you didn't take anything else. 1, never say anything to yourself that you wouldn't say to your best friend, because at the end of the day, you are your best friend. And 2, keep going. No matter what, I don't care what they say, whoever they are, keep going. And 3, of course, prunes are sexy.
Rhayne Thomas, you are the best. Thank you so much for sharing your energy, your time, your story. To my audience, thank you so much for following along, for listening to these incredible guests who are doing absolutely extraordinary things in the world. As always, we would be honored if you would like, subscribe, and follow, and we will see you next week. Thank you so much for joining Conversations with Caitlin.
Thank you, Caitlin.
Thank you. Yay!
If you enjoyed today's conversation, please like, subscribe, and follow us at Convos with Kate on all social platforms. It would mean the world to me. See you next week.